Dean Heineman, and we're here to have a conversation with Most Worshipful Brother James R Vannice, past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Washington. Most Worshipful Brother Jim was Grand Master in 1991 and 1992.
That's correct. No question asked yet, but I affirm all of that as being correct.
Jim, what prompted you to become a Mason?
Well, probably it's a long story. It goes back to my years in high school. I lived in a little town of Westport, Oregon, and some of the merchants, not very many in the small town, but the ones I respected, and an uncle of mine were Masons, and I always had great respect for them, not only their day-to-day activities and actions, but I was always impressed to see them dress up on a certain night, a couple times a month, and drive the distance of about 10 miles to a lodge meeting. From there on, after I got in the military, which I joined in 1941, I didn't have much direct contact with any Masons until about 1946, 47. And a good friend of mine was taking the degrees and spent a lot of time at our house. He was a single man, and I became interested in what he was doing and in him as an individual and a character. And then I started looking for more Masons and had a favorable impression all the way along. And finally, 52, I decided I wanted to become a part of that organization, which a petition was received. Got my degrees in Lawmaker 36 in Mount Vernon, and was raised a Master Mason in 1953.
How did you come up with the design for your Grand Master's pin?
Well, I suppose a lot of it's patriotism as you drove up today being Flag Day. To answer the question how to come up with the design for the pin, and having served for 30 years in the Navy, that patriotic streak pretty well stays with you. So that, my haircut is a bald eagle, and there's nothing more fitting to the national emblem than a bald eagle. So that was the basis for it. And I can't remember the fellow's name that designed it from a sketch, but he was a member over in on the peninsula, Dick something, and I wish I could remember his name, but he designed it, and we had it cast and distributed from that point.
What was the theme for your year as Grand Master?
The theme for my year as Grand Master was Soar to Great Heights, which is inscribed on that pin, and I think it's still a very apt logo and an apt thought today, that we should all try to improve ourselves and attain the max that we're capable of doing.
What were some major goals that you wanted to pursue during your term as Grand Master?
What were the major goals, or some of the goals that I wish to attain during my year? After the following from 2 or 3 or 4 Grandmasters ahead of me who I greatly admired, there was one thing that I found, in my estimation, that needed to be reinstituted and reinitiated into the minds of a lot of our Masons. And that's just the basic concepts of Masonry. I feel in some avenues, because of the changing social times, we have drifted away from the dignity and the pomp and ceremony, which all leads to, I feel, pride. And that was one of my main thrusts, was to try to foster and promote dignity and bring some of the basic philosophies of Freemasonry back into the craft. Other than that, we had a big problem that I may address now, and that was the fact that we were just beginning to realize that our Masonic Retirement Center was in deep trouble. We were having to dip into the reserves at that time, which seemed like an enormous amount, but in today's dollar value over $500,000 a year just to keep the place running. And so the thing that I did accomplish, and I was never that proud of it, was to, one of my recommendations was to take a certain percentage of the realized capital gains and use them for expense of the retirement center. It was a tough decision, but it was kind of like a Band-Aid for the time, and we all know what happened eventually with the retirement center, which these social times we really fell to where we didn't need that type of charity anymore. But it's still a millstone around our necks.
Along those same lines, what were the challenges of your term?
Well, I suppose like any Grand Lodge officer, the challenge is to get from one place to another and too big a schedule, too far-reaching. It wasn't as expensive to travel back then, but I don't feel that I had any real great challenges. It was an enjoyable 4 or 5 years of service to the craft, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I didn't see it as a challenge, except to do my best and try to fulfill the obligations of the leader of this craft.
What are your favorite memories as a Grand Master?
Oh, golly. One of my favorite memories as a Grand Master, it did take longer than we got here to relate those, but I think probably just in a encapsulated form was the opportunity to meet with and get to know and love so many of our brethren, travel throughout the country and meet with different lodges of different districts and enjoy the camaraderie and the fellowship and the true charity that's in the hearts of most of us.
Okay, here's one for you. Does the man make the office, or does the office make the man?
The question was, does the man make the office, or the office make the man? That could be answered yes both ways. I think you need to be prepared before you go in there, so you have to have a certain amount of responsibility in your heart and your soul. But you grow as you go through the chairs, as you go through the 4 stages from experience, by observing other Grand Lodges and maybe plagiarizing a little bit and stealing a little bit here and there from other programs that seem to work in other areas. But and I think that it built me morally, as well as hopefully that my contributions helped the Grand Lodge.
What is it like being Grand Master of Masons?
That's been 20-some years. What's it like to be being Grand Master of Masons? It's rather awe-inspiring to be elevated above the craft. There's a position that very few ever attain, and it's a humbling experience. If it's not a humbling experience, it isn't doing what it should be doing for you. I might liken it to, in some respects, my years in the service. I rose from an apprentice seaman and retired as a commissioned officer. And as anything in life, as you progress on through and attain positions of trust and leadership, it's a growing experience. It's an experience that not everyone has the opportunity to enjoy, nor is everyone deserving of it. I'm not saying that I was more deserving than anyone else, but it was truly a life's experience.
Who was one of the greatest helps to you as Grand Master?
Well, who was one of the greatest helps to me as Grand Master? I have to look back at Bud Gilbert, past Grand Master Bud Gilbert. He kind of, well, he appointed me his deputy as early as when he was junior Van Wood, and I had to lie for 4 years to keep the district from knowing what was to happen during that period of time. Bud's a very warm man, very perceptive individual, and I think I learned as much from him as what my social job, you might say, was in masonry. And I like to relate that I learned from him early on, and I tried to do the same thing at district meetings. That before a district meeting, almost without fail, he would, through the deputy, seek out some shut-in, and we'd go visit, and I'd go with him. We'd go visit that shut-in, and to me, that was one of the greatest experiences in masonry I've ever had. And I tried to do that as much as possible during my year, and it's it's an uplifting. The way you're treated, the way you're received by those who can no longer get out to lodge just to have the Grand Master and Aces come in and spend 2 or 3 hours with them. And those are some of the things that I think we don't have time for, or what, but it's led me to be very conscious of my brethren around the area here that may be ill or at the hospital. I try my best to visit somebody 2 or 3 times a month.
Those are the questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? Wisdom that you would like to impart?
Question, is there anything else I'd like to impart, or wisdom that talk about, or wisdom to impart? I can't think of anything that this particular moment. I think I pretty well covered my feelings and my gratitude for having been able to serve. I've had a good life, caught a lot of fish. There's still some out there to catch. Hopefully somewhere along the line I'll be able to get back out and do some more. But it's such people as Wayne Deming and Bud Gilbert and some of the old timers that have really been an influence, and they still are. I look to them with a lot of respect, a lot of reverence, good friends, good buddies. And that isn't all. We've got guys like Howard Christensen and the jokers in the crowd they've got masonry in their heart, and they've done a lot of good over the years. And each one of them, if you can pick out the good parts of them and try to incorporate them into your own life, I think you gain what we're supposed to as individuals.
Let me raise one question, since I just went through what you went through, and what do you think is the most important part during the course of the year, during your term as Grand Master?
Well, what was the most important part of my term during the year as Grand Master? Well, I like to hark back at the way we used to conduct our district meetings, I think for several reasons. The lodges had an opportunity to meet and greet as a lodge, not as a group, the Grand Master and his entourage. A handshake, just the personal feeling that existed during those district meetings. And there was a lot of, back in those days, it was more or less off the cuff, but those Grand Lodge committeemen and officers that were in attendance never knew who was going to be called on to give a little short talk. So everybody was prepared before we went. And I think there was a lot of Masonic philosophy and a lot of Masonic good feelings that came out of those meetings. Just to be recognized as a lodge individually, not as a group, I think is a great booster for the morale of Masons and the lodges. And there's good reasons that we haven't done it for several years. And the people that I talk to about it as the greatest part would like to see us go back to the individual district meetings because of the personal relationships you gain with the Grand Lodge, the Grand Master and the Grand Lodge team.
How much impact do you think did it cause, presiding over Grand Lodge at that particular day during the annual communication?
Would you rephrase that, please?
When you actually presided over Grand Lodge during the annual communication, do you think that has a big impact as far as your term as Grand Master?
What was the impact, from my impression, the impact that I may have had over the craft when I presided as Grand Master at the annual communication? That's a hard one to answer, but I thought that I felt, and I'm sure that each Grand Master feels the same thing, that it still sticks in my memory. When I'd come in to a session, there'd always be a patriotic song, and I got more cheers and more claps. Just the general tenure of those Grand Lodge meetings were kind of carried through on that theme. And I don't know that I had any particular impact. I thought my session went pretty well. I had a great Grand Secretary, not the one today isn't also, but Wally Tonstad had everything pretty well laid out. And like today, we get through in shorter time than we were allotted, so we had a lot of time to call on visiting dignitaries, and in most cases, our visiting dignitaries are one of the reasons that we should go to Grand Lodge, to get their philosophies and what's going on in other jurisdictions. I felt good about it. I was glad it was over, but I felt good about it.
So do you have any sort of remarks to end this interview that you might think of?
Do I have any remarks to end it? No, it's been a pleasure to meet with both of you, and thank goodness for your service past and your service coming up, both of you. It's a great trip. It's a great trip. I think you can attest to that. But you're not done. Just stepping out of the shoes as Grand Master doesn't mean you're done with the masonry. It gives you a chance to get back in your lodge and your district and to do things on a smaller basis.
What was it like going back to lodge the first time after
It was great.
down as Grand Master?
It was great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relaxation of sitting on the sidelines as a brother.
Did they allow you to actually sit on the sidelines?
Well, of course, the introductions, yeah. But then after that, then in some cases, I've been chaplain 2 or 3 times in lodges and filled in minor spots, been on committees, and I'm mentoring 2 or 3. One of them's a senior warden in a lodge now, and trying to get him up to speed. So I haven't sat back idly and done nothing. It's here, a lot of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.